When empires expanded, they seized territory. Fields changed ownership. Cities changed rulers. Treasuries were emptied. Land-based wealth was easy to capture. But Jewish communities slowly developed a different kind of economic system, one that did not depend on land at all. And that difference changed everything. Because land can be taken. Knowledge cannot. For most ancient societies, economic stability came from agriculture. Families owned fields passed down through generations. Wealth meant soil, livestock, vineyards, and grain. When those assets were lost, survival became difficult. But Jewish history took a different path. Repeated exile forced adaptation. Babylon destroyed Jerusalem and exiled its population. Later empires ruled the region. Centuries afterward, Jewish communities lived across Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. Again and again, the same experience repeated itself. Jewish communities lost territory. Yet, they rebuilt their economic life. How? Because their wealth system was portable. It rested on three foundations: education, trade skills, and internal networks. These three elements created a form of wealth that traveled wherever Jewish communities went. The first foundation was education. Jewish culture placed extraordinary emphasis on learning. Children were taught to read so they could study the Torah. Literacy therefore became common in Jewish communities long before it was widespread in many surrounding societies. This had an economic consequence. Literacy creates opportunity. A literate merchant can maintain accounts, record transactions, and analyze contracts. A literate scholar can interpret law and teach others. Education turns knowledge into capital, and capital that exists in the mind cannot be confiscated. When a Jewish family migrated to a new city, they did not begin with nothing. They carried knowledge with them. A merchant expelled from one region could rebuild trade in another. A scholar forced to move could teach again elsewhere. Education became the most portable form of wealth. This idea appears repeatedly in Jewish tradition. Wisdom is described as more valuable than gold, because gold can disappear. Wisdom travels. The second foundation of the system was trade skills. In many parts of medieval Europe, Jews faced restrictions on owning farmland. While these laws were intended to limit economic influence, they unintentionally encouraged specialization in other professions: trade, finance, craftsmanship, medicine. These occupations depended on expertise rather than territory. A farmer requires land, but a merchant requires knowledge. A physician requires training. A financier requires mathematical understanding. These skills could move across borders. When Jewish communities migrated, their professions moved with them. A merchant expelled from Spain could resume trade in the Ottoman Empire. A banker leaving Germany could reopen financial activity elsewhere. The economic system was flexible. It did not depend on geography. It depended on skill. This flexibility created resilience. If one region became hostile, communities relocated. Economic life restarted somewhere else. The third foundation was internal networks. Trade requires trust. Merchants must believe their partners will honor agreements. In many societies, trust depended entirely on local reputation. But Jewish merchants had access to something unusual: a trans-regional network. Jewish communities existed in many cities across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. These communities shared language, religious tradition, and cultural identity. A merchant traveling to a distant city could connect with the local Jewish community. This created immediate trust. Information flowed through these relationships. Business partnerships formed. Goods moved across borders. The network functioned like a decentralized economic system. Instead of relying on one center of power, it connected many smaller communities. This made the system extremely resilient. If a government expelled Jews from one region, the network did not disappear. It shifted. Trade routes adjusted. Economic activity resumed elsewhere. The network survived because it did not belong to a single territory. It belonged to a people. Well, this combination of education, skills, and networks created a powerful advantage. Jewish wealth became portable. Empires could seize land. They could confiscate houses. They could destroy buildings. But they could not easily destroy knowledge. Knowledge existed in books. Knowledge existed in teachers. Most importantly, knowledge existed in minds. When people moved, knowledge moved with them. This difference explains a historical pattern that puzzled many observers. How Jewish communities often recovered economically within a generation after displacement. The expulsion from Spain in 1492 provides a clear example. Thousands of Jews were forced to leave the country. Many lost property, businesses, and homes. Yet within decades, many of these families had rebuilt their economic lives in new regions. Communities reappeared in cities across the Ottoman Empire, North Africa, and parts of Europe. Trade resumed. Schools reopened. Economic activity returned. Say why? Because the underlying system survived. Education survived. Skills survived. Networks survived. The same pattern appeared in other periods. Jewish communities were expelled from England in the 13th century. They faced expulsions in parts of France and Germany as well. Each time the immediate consequences were severe. But the portable wealth system allowed recovery. Merchants restarted businesses. Scholars rebuilt centers of learning. Communities reorganized themselves around education and trade. Physical assets had been lost, but the intellectual foundation remained. This resilience did not appear by accident. It developed over centuries. Repeated exile taught Jewish communities a difficult lesson. Material wealth is fragile. Land can be taken. Buildings can be destroyed. But knowledge endures. So the culture began investing heavily in knowledge. Parents emphasized education for children. Communities built schools. Study became central to daily life. Education functioned not only as religious devotion, but also as economic preparation. A literate population can adapt. A skilled population can rebuild. Knowledge multiplies when shared. Each generation receives what the previous generation learned. This created continuity. A family might lose property, but if children still possessed education and skills, they could rebuild economic stability. And another feature of Jewish economic life strengthened this resilience: community cooperation. Jewish communities historically developed charitable institutions that supported individuals during hardship. Families helped relatives start businesses. Community funds provided assistance during difficult times. These structures reduced economic vulnerability. If one individual suffered loss, the broader community often provided support, and such cooperation allowed economic recovery to occur faster. Instead of rebuilding alone, individuals rebuilt together. This strengthened the entire system. Over time, the pattern became clear. Empires rose. Empires imposed restrictions. Sometimes they expelled Jewish populations. Yet the economic culture survived. Because the system did not rely on geography. It relied on knowledge. Knowledge has unusual properties. It travels easily. It multiplies when shared. And it is extremely difficult to destroy. This is why the Jewish economic tradition placed extraordinary emphasis on study. The synagogue functioned not only as a place of worship, but also as a center of learning. Books were treasured. Teachers were respected. Knowledge became the community's most reliable asset. The result was a wealth system unlike the land-based economies surrounding it. Instead of tying prosperity to territory, Jewish culture tied prosperity to education and skill. And this made wealth mobile. Wherever Jewish communities moved, they carried the system with them. Empires could control land, but they could not control knowledge. This difference explains why Jewish economic life survived so many political upheavals. Kingdoms rose and fell. Borders changed. Governments shifted. Yet the internal structure of Jewish economic life remained stable. Education produced capable individuals. Skills created opportunity. Networks created trust. Together, these elements formed a portable system of wealth. The lesson is subtle, but powerful. Material assets can disappear. Knowledge can rebuild them. Land can be conquered. But knowledge travels. This idea shaped Jewish economic thinking for centuries. Invest in education. Teach skills. Build relationships. These assets remain even when circumstances change. Empires built their wealth on territory. Jewish communities built their wealth on knowledge. And when history shifted, as it always does, knowledge proved far more durable than land.